Welcome to Deep Roots Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Thompson, certified life coach and emotion code and body code practitioner. Tonight's guest is someone whose story is both powerful and deeply relatable. I'm super excited and honored to welcome Kirby O'Connell to the podcast. Kirby has walked through the fire on an unhealthy relationship, unraveled deep patterns of people-pleasing and codependency, and emerged with a voice that inspires so many of us to do the same. She's an advocate for self-worth, boundaries, and authentic healing, and her journey reminds us that it's never too late to choose yourself. This is going to be a conversation filled with honesty, courage, and the kind of wisdom that only comes from lived experience. So Kirby, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. What a wonderful introduction. I was like, that makes me feel great. So
Well, it's all very true.
oh my goodness.
I encourage anyone to find Kirby on TikTok because all of her videos, like everyone that I have watched, has resonated with me so deeply, and they're so encouraging and empowering. And that's why I asked Kirby to join us tonight. So to get started, like I just said, your story is so powerful. Can you start by walking us through what led you to where you are now and what that healing journey has looked like for you?
Yeah, sure. So, I was mentioning earlier, like I was a professional actress for about 15 years. And the way I kind of like to start my story out is that like in 2011, I was cast as the host of a national TV show. And, I'd been acting for years and I like moved out to LA and I actually like booked this job from LA and moved me back to Chicago. But, just 7 years later, I found myself hitting rock bottom. I was in an abusive marriage. I was drinking every day to like deal with that. My self-esteem was like through the floor. I had given up on any sort of acting career, like that was completely gone. And I was having like all of these like autoimmune issues, and I just like did not recognize myself in the mirror. And I, kind of had this like come to moment where I was like, how did I get here? Um, and then I like was just like really trying to figure that out. And what came was like, it was from a lack of boundaries. Like I just, everything could be traced back to me not standing up for myself, me not knowing how to say no. And that kind of all led just like, one moment at a time to me kind of slowly letting everything go. And, so I kind of, I started this like process of like, okay, well, like, why don't I have boundaries, And I was like, okay, well, like, what do you need to have boundaries? I'm like, well, you probably need like to be able to say no or like have a voice, right? Like, okay, well, if I don't have boundaries, I probably don't have a voice. Like, well, why don't I have a voice? And I was like, what do you need to have a voice? And I was like, well, maybe you need to believe that you're like worth protecting. And I was like, so like self-worth. And I was like, well, I must not have that, And so I just kept like pulling on this string. And then I was like, okay, well, why don't I have that? And, reflecting on my childhood, like two different things came up from when I was like really young. And it was my stepdad grew up in an extremely alcoholic home, very like the worst kind of childhood you probably could imagine. And he had like massive amounts of rage that he had not dealt with. And so, when my mom and him married, I learned very quickly that if I used my voice to like defend myself with him, like things got 50 times worse. So it was kind of like in my like 6-year-old little brain, it was like, sticking up for yourself equals bad. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the thing that like compounded that was, I remember taking that to my parents and just being like, I really don't like living with him. And I was kind of just met with like I was just dismissed, and then nothing changed. And so I think like in my little brain, I was like, oh, well, when I speak up for myself, like nothing happens or it gets worse. And also I must not be worth protecting. And so, you can imagine what that would do to a child. Like I started having panic attacks in like I want to say like 6th grade. I developed an eating disorder in like middle school, which I later learned is not just about like appearances, but about control and being able to
Yep.
control like what you eat. If you can't control anything on the outside, you can at least control what you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, you know, I found alcohol when I was like 14,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, well, this is how everyone does it, you know? I was like, oh, okay. Yeah,
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is how we deal with
Yes.
like trauma on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like off to the races. You know, I remember telling my therapist, like, I was so afraid of, or he told me probably,
Mm-hmm.
I was such a scared child. Okay, I was a
Mm-hmm.
very scared child because I was living with a very terrifying bear, essentially. And my therapist was like, I was like, you know, made the connection that once I started drinking alcohol, I was no longer afraid of roller coasters.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because I was getting the like, you know, medication that I needed
Mm-hmm.
for like my nervous system to like chill out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked until it didn't. And so then like after that, it was just like a series of I was just like binge drinking. I don't think I drank that different than most people in their, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in college and in their 20s. But I will say like friendships, I tended to attract really controlling friendships. And the only way I would deal with that would be by like avoiding them and cutting them out because I
Mm-hmm.
had no skill. I had no tools to
Mm-hmm.
do anything. And you know, I didn't really have any like serious boyfriends or anything until I met my ex. And that's when things really went south because, you know, I could like detach from the friends that were controlling, but, you know, like I couldn't detach from him and I was living with him. And so,
Right.
um, and I would say like, you know, he hasn't been diagnosed, but from everything that I've read and seen, he's got very strong narcissistic tendencies. Okay.
Yes.
Um, and I think being in such, you know, living with him that like everything just started going horribly wrong from
Mm-hmm.
the second he moved here. Um, and like basically because I was just abandoning myself left and right and he was like totally fine with that and preferred it. And so, you know, then it was just a series of like me becoming isolated from friends and family, and like none of us really knew what was going on. Like I think my family
Mm-hmm.
was really confused. Then like that isolation got to the point where then we moved to Arizona and I had a 6-month-old and things
Mm-hmm.
really ratcheted up. And also he had a drinking problem himself and that's where things went really, really awry. And actually he got a job as a pastor at a church down there. So it was like, you know, I thought I married, this is the wild part. I thought I married like a bookish pastor,
Yeah.
and what he ended up being was like an alcoholic carpenter, which is like what my stepdad was. And I'm just like, you can't even write that. How? How? I didn't even know. He didn't even know. Like, how is
Yes.
that?
It's amazing the people that we attract in our life though, because it is a mirror and it shows the wounds that we need to heal from.
The universe was like, okay, so we're going to heal that here, or at least maybe not in the marriage, but we're going to heal it in general, you know, in
Yes.
your life. And I
And
was
we're
like,
going to do it over and over until you
yeah,
understand your self-worth and that you need to heal and what you need to heal
yeah,
from, right?
yes. And so basically, like, what got me to my bottom, I think, was like having my second and realizing that that confidence kind of started to come back because I was like,
Yes.
I am taking care of 2 children
Mm-hmm.
and I'm doing it pretty much by myself and the confidence that comes with motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what, and also just kind of realizing that seeing that my ex was in a dark hole
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't get him out. And I was about to fall into that dark hole with him. Like I was really
Mm-hmm.
close to like a spiritual death, you know? Like
Yes.
I had given up on a lot of hopes and dreams, but not completely, but I was
Mm-hmm.
almost there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I was like, I met somebody who was in a 12-step program.
Mhm.
And, at the time my therapist was like, why don't you just go with her and check a meeting out? And I was like, "Mm, whatever, okay." And then I went and it was just like I didn't really have a very low drinking bottom. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, most people in my family and my friends don't think I'm an alcoholic. Um,
Right.
but it was my bottom,
Mhm.
and so I think I was like, oh, these people will help me deal
Mhm.
with this and get out of this. And like, it seems like they know the way.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like the beginning. I remember thinking like, if I do this, this might end my marriage. And it did. Um, but not without trying. I think I like exhausted
Mhm.
every attempt.
You
Uh,
exhausted all efforts.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think like eventually I got to the point where it's like, I remember my sponsor just being like, you have to accept him for who he is now, not who you want him to be.
Mhm.
And once you do that, you can see who he really is and what he really wants. And that's when I was like, oh yeah, he doesn't want to, he's gone 90% of the time. Like he doesn't want to be married. He doesn't
Mhm.
definitely want me. And like, so it was kind of just like honoring his desire. Like I really started trying to heal the people pleasing in the marriage. I was going to a 12-step program for that.
Mhm.
And I'd had some progress for myself, but you can't make somebody grow if they don't want to. And so like it's been, an interesting like 3-ish years, but I finally feel like myself again.
Mhm.
And also, I'm not to say that this is like at the feet of my ex, like,
Mhm.
I just think all the ism in my family, like, I'd say my dad's a workaholic, my mom's codependent, my
Mhm.
stepdad, is probably an untreated Al-Anon for sure. And then there's also like, there is drinking in my family. I look back and I'm like, yeah, I was conditioned to be a
Yes.
people pleaser.
Yes.
And, um, and then that's why I kind of, went down the road I went down. But I I kind of have recently come to realize, and I think I made a post on this, that like I am grateful for my narcissistic ex, because
Mhm.
I think I would have continued my life until I died being a people pleaser and
Yes.
living for everybody else except myself had I not run into him. I think, I like to say that he gave me a PhD in boundaries
Mm.
because like, it was like incessant. Like I had to learn,
Yes.
which I don't like, I'm not giving him credit. I don't think he
Mhm.
did it on purpose, but he did kind of like give me myself back because I had to fight, what's the saying, tooth and nail, like to
Mhm.
hang on to the little tiny shred of myself that I had left. And also my kids. Like, I think that was a huge thing. I think, maybe I would have thrown the towel in, but because I had 2 kids depending on me, I was like, well, who's going to take care of these children?
Absolutely. Yes. And what you have already instilled in your kids by choosing yourself and discovering what people pleasing was, you are teaching them boundaries and you're teaching them to have a voice. And
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. The thing that I wish I would have known before the divorce and before the separation, my oldest was about 6, 7, and he would get off the bus from school and I'd pick him up, and have his little brother with me.
Mhm.
And there was a playground right by the bus stop. And I'd be like, hi, Waits, how's it going? And then
Mhm.
he wouldn't even make eye contact with me. He would just drop his backpack at my feet and he'd run off to the park, and it was just normal.
Right.
And I don't think I realized how much it was affecting him until
Mhm.
about 3 months after the separation. They'd started school again in September, and he got off the bus and like literally screamed mom and ran full force to me. And
Oh,
I was just
wow. I have the
like,
chills.
yeah, because I'm like,
Yes.
he saw me being disrespected
Mhm.
regularly. And so of course
Mhm.
he probably thought my self-worth was super low, because it kind of was. I
Yeah.
was accepting really poor treatment. And so I think that's how like the cycle continues, is because they see it happen and so then they do it,
Yes.
when they get older. And so somebody like commented on a post that I made about being that if you start on your growth process that you might leave somebody behind, and like calling me selfish and whatever. And so I just was like curious. So I was like, asked my boys, I was like, hey guys, if you're friends with someone and they're really mean to you over and over and over, and you've given them a bunch of chances, like what do you do? And they're like, oh yeah, we don't be friends with them. And I was like,
Yes. No, yes.
Because I would have been like, oh, you just try harder. Like, no. You're going to like me.
Yes. I'm going to make you because I can't handle anybody not liking me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a challenge. Like, yeah. And so anyways, I was just like, oh, I don't care what the lady
proud mama moment.
Like, my kids are, and even my youngest is kind of going through this thing with like one of his friends who just, like what Brene Brown calls them, like candle blower outers. And like he's just starting to talk about, like, at first, like me and my oldest could see it, but he couldn't see it, and now he's like, you know what, I'm kind of noticing he is like that. And it's like, but you can still be friends with them, just like notice, and so we'll see where that goes. But I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are things that took me 40 years to learn. And there's 7,
Yes. My same thing. I had the same experiences with my children, and my 15-year-old daughter, she'll tell me stories about things with her friends or guy friends or things like that, and I am so proud of the way that she handles it. I'm like, I'm 45 and I'm just learning this, and so what you have instilled in your kids, that's incredible.
Maybe it's partly me, but I also think like their generation just is like better at it.
They are much better. Yeah. I feel like they're waking up to it and realizing, but that's good, because if our kids can find self-worth before we did, I don't think I even knew what self-worth was. I couldn't have told you that.
Yeah,
I mean,
is
that even a thing?
Like, I was like,
no.
What is self-worth?
Yeah.
I mean, like boundaries. It's like you hear people talk about it, but like, what actually is that?
Yeah, I'm still working on the boundaries thing myself.
I mean, me too.
And as women in our culture, a lot of that, and I believe that you mentioned this before about conditioning, how we're conditioned, but we are conditioned to be, and of course, we're natural nurturers, our feminine energy, and so, but we're conditioned to be people pleasers and to have no boundaries, and we feel guilty when we do enforce it, or that's how we're conditioned. And so it's empowering once we realize how much power we do have, and that we can have healthy relationships and know our self-worth.
Yeah, and I think a huge thing that happened for me was kind of reframing the past as, I think there's like an absolute time for realizing that you've been victimized.
Yes.
Like, there's a time for that, and that is a necessary phase that you do need to go through. I mean, like, I have a lot of people who be like, you victimhood, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you need to know. If you don't know, you need to go through that moment of knowing. You can't stay there. And so, like, for me, it was like reframing everything as I allowed it to happen, because technically, when I decided to stop putting up with it and to leave my marriage, I was allowed to do that,
Yes.
Which means that had I had those tools earlier, I could have done it then. I just didn't have those tools,
Yes.
But yeah, I was allowing it. And it's funny, like when I started getting sober, and that's kind of like, he and I would like drink on the couch after the boys would go to bed. And just tune out and watch TV. And so when I stopped drinking, he was still drinking. And that's kind of like how I started my jewelry business, was like, I got to do something. I got to do something that keeps my hands from being idle. And I started making jewelry in my kitchen table at night instead, and like that. But like I learned later that like to get out of victim mode, you have to go into creative mode, because then you see like, okay, I'm not just reacting, I'm capable of action in my life, and I can affect change, and I'm not just somebody that's affected. It's just like crazy looking back. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know that. I didn't victimhood. I was like, I don't know, you know?
That was such an empowering moment for me when I realized much of my life, I had very much a victim consciousness. And, why do they treat me like this? Or why did these things happen to me? And I remember where I was standing when it finally hit me. I have a choice.
Hmm.
We can't control what happens to us. And it's okay to say we're a victim to this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're living in victim mode, right? Or victim consciousness. And being able to say, I have a choice and I chose to stay, or I chose to receive this treatment and didn't stand up for myself or walk away. That was so empowering for me when I realized that I'm in control of all of this.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, when I had been healing for a while, but that is when it just like took off. And I looked at situations completely differently.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Or,
Oh yeah. I mean, I even like, my ex was pretty narcissistic, which typically meant like he had good boundaries when it came to
they
like
do
I
have good
like
boundaries.
holding him accountable for anything. Like, and so like I remember just like observing him in certain situations where like he did say no. And he I've been doing a series of videos of like what you can learn from like narcissists about
Yes.
boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that they're doing them for like with good intent. It's
But
all
there's still
about,
something to learn there.
but there is something to learn. Like he had a very, and I think that's partly why I was attracted to him, is because he
Mm-hmm.
had a very strong sense of self. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was probably a false sense of self, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that. And that's probably why he was drawn to me, you know?
Yep.
But yeah, no, but now I have one, especially when it comes to them, you
I
know?
love it. So
Yeah.
you're autoimmune.
Oh yeah.
When did you notice that starting?
When I was an actor, I worked in like interior design showrooms, and I started having issues breathing. I couldn't take deep breaths. And I thought it was because I was folding all of these fabric samples. And then that turned into, I went to the doctor. They told me I basically was anemic, which I'm like not sure how that happened, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't really offer me, they're just like take iron, whatever.
Yeah.
Then it was my hair started falling out. I started having like kind of Crohn's disease-esque
Mm-hmm.
digestive issues,
Mm-hmm.
like major fatigue, major inflammation, and just like all this stuff that I just didn't know what was going on. And then I
Mm-hmm.
even at one point started having really bad heart issues. And I went to a cardiologist because it was kind of really scary. And he was like, "Oh, well, you probably were born with a heart murmur." And I was like, "Nope."
No.
Which now I'm like, oh yeah, all the heart chakra was completely
Exactly.
shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So my heart was like really feeling it. And then, now I know, like as soon as he moved out, when the separation, I mean, in that first year of being separated, my body healed. I used to have like
Yeah.
gluten sensitivities, um, I had some dairy sensitivities, gone, just completely.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
And I know now because I'm like, oh, I was in such a constant state of fight or flight that my
Yes.
cortisol levels were probably poisoning my entire body.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I hear so many women talking about autoimmune diseases, and I'm just like, it's connected. I mean, at least it was.
Yes.
I'm not saying the symptoms are not real. They were very real
They're
for me.
real. Yeah.
Yeah, they're so real. But like, I think we need to start looking at like what's going on in your life
Mm-hmm.
right now? Like, what are we pushing down? I mean, I was exhausted. Yeah, didn't know how to say no to anything, was trying to be perfect and also like could
Mm-hmm.
never please the person I was with. And then just also taking care of two children pretty much by yourself.
Yes. And that's a huge load. That's big. I was diagnosed with RA, rheumatoid
Right.
arthritis, when I was
Yeah.
40. And on strong medication, my health was declining rapidly. And the doctor said that it was very aggressive. I was like, I'm too young for this.
Yeah.
And I thought that I was healthier than I was. But of course, now I don't have any health problems or issues, no medication. My body has healed itself. because it came from layers of trauma that's trapped in our body and our energy centers and the chakras and just all the stuff. And I don't believe that we are educated in the fact that the stressors in our life and the trauma, it affects our physical body because we're energy beings.
Well, and I think also, like, first of all, the trauma, but also the, like, anger that we push down because it's not okay for us to share.
Everything we suppressed.
Yeah.
And not having a voice and not speaking up and all of it.
I mean, so have you ever read the book The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck?
No.
Oh my
But I'm
gosh.
writing it down.
I think it's my favorite book. Basically she talks about, and I was like, it was kind of like my first book that I read after, like, you know, being in the healing process for a few years, where I was like, oh thank God, I'm like kind of almost on the other side, and I'm not like right at the beginning, you know. She basically talks about how she would do this thing called like a truth fast, where she would just not lie at all whatsoever, and she said that like her like healing in her life like accelerated. And I found the same thing to be true. Like for me, like how my separation like started, or like I started finding my way out of that, was like I was in an abusive marriage. It should have been obvious to me that like I didn't like my partner, but like I had been shoving that down for so long. And I remember being in the shower and I was like, the thought came through and I didn't resist it. And I don't know how it got through, but it got through. And I was like, I can't think that.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Like, you think that? What does it say about me? What does it say about him? What does it say about what I have to do? You know, and I was like, okay, I'll just let it be there. I'm just not going to tell anybody. But like then eventually I got comfortable with it being there and it wasn't so scary. And then, you know, it's kind of like exposure therapy, you know, like we had cicadas here last year and I really don't like bugs, but like, you know, after the summer was over, I was like, oh, they're fine. You know?
Yeah.
But like same thing. Then I started telling friends and family, and you know, they weren't shocked. And then I told our therapist, and then I told my ex in therapy. And I just like, it was like a snowball effect. I just kept on telling the truth because it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
And like I feel like that's how I untangled my life.
That's incredible. You know, authenticity, because I mean that's like you were being authentic with yourself. And you were giving yourself permission to be honest and truthful. And of course, that's the highest frequency that, I mean, there is. And of course, love is after that. And you held space for yourself. That is so beautiful. And that takes courage, because how many of us are walking around, or especially, well, women and men, basically.
Yeah.
That how many women or men are walking around and they are not able to be honest with themselves.
Yeah.
And just that takes so much courage.
Well, and I think that's why I'm like, I feel like that mass awakening that's like kind of happening right now has large part to do with like social media, because like people are starting to talk and share. And,
they are.
You know, and like, and I would say like, when I started, basically the way I started down the path I'm on now is that a friend I knew from, I used to like sell shoes at Nordstrom, and like, as you know, a day job when I was still acting too. And I knew her from that. And then I knew that she had gone on to do like a one-woman show, but she was like this very like meek woman. I was like, what is going on? Like, and so then I found out that she had like a podcast, okay? And then she somehow found my earrings that I was like selling on Instagram at the time and started buying those. But then she invited me onto her podcast, and like I was kind of in the midst of getting sober. So, like, you know, after that, she was like, hey, you should like do this. And I was like, I don't know what that means, you know. She's like, you know, the podcast got like really good, you know, responses. And I was like, okay. And so then I started working with her. She was a coach, and she coached people on how to like tell their story. And I didn't know, you know, and there was like, I'd say like a year, 2 years of space between the podcast and when I actually hired her as a coach. And like, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just knew that I wanted to like speak out and help people. Because, like, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was happening. I also didn't know the consequences of not having any boundaries. And it, like if you don't have boundaries, like I don't think people realize that like you are essentially like giving your life away. You you know, and you're gonna like, that's how I was. Like, I ended up on somebody else's idea of the life I should be living instead of
Yes.
that I wanted. It's not life or death, but it kind of is. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you wanna actually live your like one life, or do you want to like just abide by the rules of everything? Which, like, why are these rules even here? Who made up these
Yes.
rules? You know?
People that wanted control over others.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It feels so good, and I'm sure you get this too. Just like when people comment and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was going on in my
Yes.
relationship," and I'm like, "Oh, if we could just help one person."
Just one
Like,
person, I know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just think so many people are walking around, and it's not just marriages, but in relationships, period,
Mm-hmm.
you know, putting up with treatment that is abusive. You know, like I think like anytime someone's trying to control you, they're trying to impose themselves on your
Mm-hmm.
will, take away your autonomy. And I like, to me, that's abuse, you know?
It is. And I believe that people have a hard time actually saying those words, abuse.
It took me a while. Like when I stopped working with my coach after I'd like done all that like story work, it was about a year and a half before I started actually doing any videos because I was just like scared about saying anything about my ex, saying
Mm-hmm.
anything about my family. Um, and then I just was like, you know what, I'm just gonna make one video. I'm just gonna make one video. I'm gonna put it on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
and see
Let's
it.
see how it
Yeah,
goes.
yeah. And like, and then I was like, you know, I didn't have a TikTok account, and I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I know anybody on TikTok. I'll just get on TikTok. And like, I do know people on there, but you know, I don't know. As I've done it, like it's like the same thing. Like I am not as scared. I'm just trying to help other people who may or may not be going through this.
And what you're doing is so important because people need to hear it. And I just, like I said earlier, the courage that it takes. And I'm very, very impressed and so grateful that our paths have crossed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you must have gone through the same thing. Like, to
Oh,
get on.
you'll go through the same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I'm realizing. It's like, to the like the things, the fears you have to work through to just put yourself on camera and then push it out into the world is like next level stuff. And so, you know, it's funny, like I'm sure you get this too. Like people will comment on my videos and they'll like give me pointers and like say I
Mm-hmm.
did this or whatever. And then I go look at their profile and they have no videos. I was like, okay, all
I
right,
know.
good
It's
for
like,
me. And then we can
okay.
talk, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, yeah, because it's hard. It's like, it's again, you have to face all of those fears.
And we do face the fears, but what is fear? I mean, we're just anticipating something that hasn't happened yet.
I was watching a friend's YouTube video. So I'm part of
Mm-hmm.
like this coaching program. And so like it's all these like spiritual entrepreneurs. And he said that fear is faith in evil. And I was like, wow.
Yes, it
It just helped me
is.
put it into perspective
Yeah.
of like, okay, I'm gonna have faith in something. Do
Mm-hmm.
I want to have faith in like self-limiting beliefs and doubt and, you know, anxiety and things not going my way? Or do
Mm-hmm.
I want to have faith in, you know, everything's working out for me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That one. I mean,
Yeah, that's the one I want.
yeah,
Yes.
that's what I want for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So many people, and most right now, they are on the side of the spectrum that is rooted in fear and all the stuff. And and being able to see it, I guess the way I see it now, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, my ex, I'm like, it's so hard to watch
Mm-hmm.
him, you know, not heal. And
Yeah.
not to say that like I had a ton of healing to do. I had so much
Mm-hmm.
healing to do, which is why we met. Because it's like
Yes.
we both had a lot of healing to do. And so it's really heartbreaking to like watch him not be able to access that, you
Because you
know?
can see the potential. Of course,
Oh my gosh, that's why I stayed in a
not
marriage for so long. You know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
everyone, just because we see someone's potential doesn't mean that they see it or they even want it.
Yeah.
That's been a big one for me to learn just through so many relationships. Just because I can see the potential in someone else, you can't force someone to want to heal.
Yeah.
And because once my eyes were open, I was like, oh, everybody is going to want to do this. Like, why would we
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, like
You
that's how
know?
you think, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
And
One,
I found out really quickly that it is just that's not the case. And I've had to scale
one.
it back a bit and use discernment on how much I can say to certain people. And because at first, oh my goodness, I was just so excited about it. And I just wanted everybody to experience this and the freedom and the empowerment. And I could not wrap my head around why people didn't want to go down that road, which, I mean, obviously we're on our journey and they're stuck in fear and all this stuff, but it has been that's been a big lesson for me.
I know. 'Cause, well, I think like as, you know, for me as a people pleaser, I just was like, well, no, but this will help you. So, but like I didn't realize that like
No.
just in that, like I think I know better than they do.
I know, yes, you're absolutely right.
Like
I
there's
know what
like
you mean. I
yeah,
had
there's
to
like
tell me that
some
same.
like huge ego going on there that you don't realize and you're like, oh no, but I'm being helpful, so it cancels it out. But really it's like,
Yes.
you know, I know better for you and you should just listen to me, just do
Yes,
this
you
and
should
then
do
you'll be
it.
fine.
You'll feel
Yeah.
better, I promise.
In, you know, the 12-step program that's for like, you know, people pleasing, they
Mm-hmm.
talk about giving people the dignity of their own experience. And I was like, oh.
Yes,
And also it's such a load off my shoulders too, because I'm
it
like, oh,
is.
okay. It's hard to feel like you have to save everyone. Like that's how
Mm-hmm.
it felt, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore.
It is much easier once you realize that too. What did it look like? Like, what were the fears around letting go of your sense of self that you subscribed to at the time when you were in the midst of like people pleasing and not having boundaries? What was the scariest part of that? Being able to let that go.
Being able to let go of people pleasing.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Like, because you
feelings.
subscribe to that, like, this
Yeah.
is who I am.
I think it was the amount of like discomfort I felt in my body. Because you know, I think like I learned people pleasing as a way to survive the house I grew up in. What I teach in terms of like if you're new to setting boundaries is like get comfortable with being uncomfortable
Hmm.
a little bit every day. Do
Hmm.
something that makes yourself just a little uncomfortable because that's a muscle that you have to grow. My stepdad would like fly off the handle and like rage and scream
Hmm.
and so like I became so hyper vigilant of the surroundings just so I could be like brace myself for
Yes.
that it completely cut me off from how I felt. So
Hmm.
I could tell you how everybody else felt in the room. I had no idea how I felt other
Yeah.
than when things were bad, it felt really terrible. So yeah, so I think that was the hardest part was like the guilt, like basically my body and my mind screaming at me that I was like abandoning them
Yes.
because I kind of was, you know, but I like logically knew better.
Hmm.
But it just hadn't like it doesn't hit for a while. So like that was terrifying. And then also I think well, the thing that really helped me was working the 12 steps and like, you know, you have to write out all of your resentments and then you have to like tell all those resentments to your sponsor. Um,
Hmm. Mm.
and in doing that, I essentially realized that my whole life, I've been so mad at everybody else for not treating me well, for not
Yes.
seeing me, for not loving me in the way I wanted to be loved, not realizing that I was right there the whole time and
Hmm.
I also was not doing that. And
That's
so
right.
that was like a watershed moment for me because then after that, like I had this moment where I was meeting another mom that invited me out for a play date at this park in our neighborhood. And, you know, I had gotten there first and she showed up on the other side of the park. And then she proceeded to start talking to like someone, like a stranger from what I
Hmm.
felt in an interaction. And she stayed there for like 45 minutes and never came over until the very end. And we had to go. And like
Hmm.
everything in my mind was like, I'm humiliated. She hates me. I'm such a piece of crap. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
everything started going off. And then you know, it was the first time after having done that work with my sponsor. And I was like, wait a second, I'm here. This isn't about me.
I was gonna say, yeah, it had nothing to do with you.
Has
Hmm.
nothing to do with me. I don't have to make this personal. You are good. You are okay. People like you. You like yourself. It's fine. You're going to be okay. And then, also I was like, okay, maybe like if she did invite me just so that she could be like, what does that say about her?
Exactly.
Kind of weird. So it just like from that moment on, being able to validate myself and kind of stay in my own body is the best way I can describe it, has really helped me.
Isn't it an incredible feeling when you can come to conclusions like that and realize this is not about me? Most of the time, it's not about us. We just feel like it is because we're trying to fix and we want to make sure that we haven't done anything wrong. And so that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels so good to say no. Oh my gosh. I just couldn't.
Are you getting better at saying no?
Oh my gosh, so much better. Like I went on a trip a couple weeks ago and like this woman at the like car rental place was like trying to like slyly get me to sign up for insurance that I did not need. And I go to sign it and I'm like, wait a second, why is that on there? She's like, oh well, you need that. I was like, no, I don't. And she's like, yeah, you do. And like, she was kind of miffed. I was like, no, I don't, take it off. I was just like, who is this person? Like I said no. Like exactly. And I don't feel bad about it. Amazing.
What boundaries do you feel like have been most important in your healing journey?
For me, I've had to set a lot of boundaries with my family. Like like one of my friends is like, staying with family, in the same place, it's kind of a hostage situation you have, like, a lot of people in the program are like, no, you just get a hotel or like whatever, and going to visit, you just whatever. I think for me has been like protecting my time and my energy. That's probably the biggest. I mean, like that's pretty much boundaries, like not I've lost quite a few friendships because I realized when I started waking up and looking around and being like, oh, a reciprocal relationship, like what's that? And then realizing I didn't really have many of those. And then also not even just reciprocal, but like I had some, friends that like actively put me down on a regular basis. And so like, calling that out and then also just eventually like distancing myself from those people. I like to pre-plan my boundaries. Like I feel like you kind of have to do that. So like it's just stuff like if I know somebody's calling who's like really long-winded, when I get on the phone, I'm like, I got 5 minutes. What's going on? And then I gotta go.
That is a great way to handle that.
Yeah. And then it's like, depending on the relationship, if you want it, like, or you just don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say like those are like my two main things. And then obviously like anybody that's like disrespectful to me, that's I had this realization that I have a friend, she's a dear friend, and I was like, she's never once put me down, she's never once made me feel small, like she's just never done it. And I was like, and you know what, I don't think I've ever done that for her either. And also that can be all of my relationships. Like they can all be held to that level.
They can, yes.
Yeah, I don't have to deal with any of this, and so like when I realized that, I was like, yeah, okay. And then also like once you start speaking up for yourself, like the people that don't like it kind of take off anyways, unfortunately.
Because they can't handle that, yes.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how the more you heal and the more you protect your energy and your time, like you said, because those are so important, and many people don't know how to do that, and that's why it's important for us to talk about it. But it's so interesting how people fall out of our lives that don't align with who we are now. And then we were talking before we started recording that, and then other people step into our lives and our paths cross. I think that is so incredible to watch that. And that now that we can see what's happening and we know how it works, I love watching it in action.
I know, I do too. And it makes me feel like it's not all on my shoulders. It's like, it's not totally up to me to have to go find, my tribe. Like, it's just like a matter of like running into them and, and messaging them.
And it's just there. Yes.
Like, hey, I resonate with you. Like, you seem great.
Yes.
Just like noticing, just like, recognizing people that.
And we were talking before we started recording that Kirby sent a message to me. I think it was a Saturday morning.
Was it?
I think, but I had it on my list. Or no, it was a Monday morning. Yeah, because I made a list over the weekend of things I needed to do, and my intention was to message you about the podcast to see if you would be interested in being a guest. And you messaged me before that, and we have never talked. Like this isn't like our paths just completely crossed, and like she sent me a message and I was going to send her a message. So it's amazing how this stuff happens.
Yeah, that was so funny because I was like, wait, what? She's asking me. I was like, I didn't even know you had a podcast. I just was like watching your, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It was so wild.
I love it. So how has your connection to your intuition and spirituality deepened, like during this healing journey?
You know what's funny? Like, I think because as a kid, I was very, in tune when I was a little kid. I remember just being like really like fascinated with nature and just, I just have like really fond memories of being out in like a field by my house and like, catching frogs and like all that kind of stuff. And then also just, I've always known how to like make people laugh. Like like from like a young age, I don't know, I really enjoyed that. And, and I lost that, I think, and I think we all lose that to a certain extent, like just growing up and just being conditioned to like live in this society. But I think like once I started giving myself space to explore spirituality, and then also like, I think for me, like to heal, I had to become aware. I remember this one fight that I was having with my ex, and like we were in the car and like it was heated and like it was quiet. It was like after the fight. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking like, what do I need to do? What is he thinking right now? I was thinking, how do I feel? What do I need? And I was like, whoa, what?
Again, who was that said that?
I was like, am I thinking of myself right now? This is amazing.
And you didn't feel like desperate to like fix it. Because you knew you couldn't fix it.
That was the first time that I was like, he can deal with it. Like, I don't think I like consciously thought that, but I was just like, what do I need? It was like the first time I was being kind to myself, and like seeing myself. And so, I mean, my intuition, I think it's been there all along. I've just ignored it, like, I mean, I want to say that like I shut it off, but like really no, I'm realizing now that I had gut feelings about so many people and situations. I just told myself the nice Christian girl thing. I was like, no, well, they probably don't mean that. I just like gaslit myself out of believing it. And since I've stopped doing that, I'm realizing how on point it is. And I'm just like, oh, well, this is wonderful,
Yes.
To have in my back pocket.
I don't know if you were like me, but alcohol too, I use that to quieten that voice.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to face it.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I realized I was doing this at the time, but looking back, I'm like, oh, I needed to stop drinking so I could see how awful the situation was that I was in. And I basically was using the alcohol to numb it so that I could stay in this terrible situation. And once I stopped numbing it, I saw how bad it was. Well, then I started doing something about it, but it was until I took that away, that I could actually see what was going on under the hood and figure out what to do.
Yes. I think that a lot of women and men alike, but just again with culture and women, a lot that resonates with a lot of women.
I look at my family and they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the tools to teach me what I needed to learn. But guess what? Like I had such like a good amount of healing come through when I realized that like my stepdad, compared to what his mom and his stepdads were like growing up, compared to that, my stepdad is probably the best father you've ever ever did.
Yes.
But for me, I didn't have that comparison. But like when I realized that, I'm like, okay, like where does the buck stop? It's just like it goes back and back. And like, so it's like, okay, it can hopefully start to stop with me, you know,
Yes. And
but
they do the best they can with the tools that they
yeah,
had.
yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
And even still, like I really truly do believe that like everybody's doing the best they can.
I completely agree with you. What is one thing that you wish every woman knew about healing?
I think that it's okay to heal,
Yeah.
even when people around you don't want to.
Yes.
I I kept myself so small
Hmm.
because I didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Hmm.
But really, like, that just led to me, like, almost falling in that pit with him. And,
Hmm.
I got to this point where, and I still believe this is true. Like, I remember realizing that, okay, I know that us splitting up is going to be the best thing for me.
Hmm.
And also probably the best thing for the boys because they will at least have one parent who is healthy as opposed to two
Yes.
that aren't. I realized, oh, wow. Yeah, this is going to be the best thing for him too, because he has to step up and participate in his life. I think I've like seen him, like he struggles with self-hatred. Like I knew that the whole
Hmm.
time. And I also knew that like that's why he could never love me because he just doesn't, you can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
It's really hard. I mean, like I have sponsees that are terrified of the same thing.
Mhm.
It's like, I think if I do this, it might be the end of my marriage. And it's like, I think maybe, or maybe they'll become inspired and step up
Yes.
to their own healing journey. And even if they don't, well, at least you'll be healthy and at peace.
If you could leave everybody with one truth that they could hold on to during the hard moments, what would that be?
Okay, so one thing that has like really helped me,
Hmm.
I would say, I mean, that's so hard, but well, I really think self-love is the number one most important thing.
I
And
agree.
especially for women, like we're so good at loving everybody else, but like
Hmm.
I really think once I started learning that loving myself is what like healed my life essentially.
Hmm.
So having compassion for myself. And part of that, the way I started learning how to do that was progress, not perfection. Um,
Mm, that's
like I
big.
remember after like realizing that I was like what, codependent or people pleaser,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
after like realizing and then like understanding what that meant, I think I read Codependent no more. Like it
Hmm.
kind of like shined light on a lot of my relationships. I remember having this phone call with my mom and it just didn't, I had all this information, I just didn't know how to implement it.
Hmm.
Um, and I had an expectation of how this call was going to go, and it went the opposite. And I remember thinking, okay, that didn't go the way I wanted it to,
Hmm.
but I learned something from it, even if it was a very small thing. Next time I will do a little bit better. And so, like, just giving
Yes.
myself like that room was
Hmm.
so helpful. And then I just started applying that to like everything else. And then I think also something that has really helped me was Byron Katie's work of like, are you familiar with Byron Katie's work? Like
Hmm.
the I forget what she calls it. Oh my gosh, she calls it the work, but basically like questioning negative self-talk. So, I had a lot of like really bad like body image issues, and so I'd
Hmm.
be really mean to myself in my head. And basically it's like, do you know that's true? Like that thought that just came in your head. Okay, is that like objectively true?
Hmm.
Okay, if it's not, could the opposite be true as well? And so it
Mm.
really opened up my mind to believe that like maybe this isn't exactly the truth and maybe I don't have to believe this thought, and also maybe it's not even my thought, maybe it's
Yeah.
just something I've been replaying in my head since I was a kid,
Hmm.
from like other voices. um so yeah, those two things, like progress not perfection, and questioning those negatives. And even like before that, like not even questioning them, I think when I just started realizing how negative the thoughts were in my head, like the just
Hmm.
being aware of that was like enough for me to be like, oh
Yes.
yeah, I didn't realize that was the lay of the land in there, because it was
That
just me
voice
talking.
in our head. Yeah, it can
Yeah, it
be
was me.
brutal, can it not?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So tell us briefly about your the your company that you have, what you do. I want to leave all of your social
Well,
media, like YouTube, anything, your
sounds good.
websites, in the description so people can find you.
So on YouTube, I'm Kirby, recovering people pleaser. And
Mhm.
then on TikTok, I'm Nom Spiritual, because I kind of like want to talk about like both,
Yes.
boundaries and spiritual. I just kind of like didn't want to like, box myself in.
And we're going
But
to get more into spirituality like at a later date. And I'm excited
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
for sure. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I'm essentially like going into coaching, and I think after doing some work with the first coach that I worked with, like eventually speaking, um,
Hmm.
getting into public speaking and doing that kind of thing. Yeah, I think my desire is just to like hopefully you can skip a few steps. You know, like you don't have to figure
Yes.
it out in the dark. You have somebody that like already went through it and that can like, lead you in the right direction. And like for me, I love spirituality, and I love like making it accessible, but
Hmm.
then with boundaries I like really like breaking it down and making it simple, and like so kind of like boundaries for beginners,
Yes.
people that are just starting out on like realizing they're people pleasers, and like, or in a toxic relationship and not
Hmm.
knowing where to go from there.
Hmm.
Because I think I just like that was the thing. I was like, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to have boundaries. Like, well, I've never seen that modeled anywhere. What the heck is
What does
that?
that even mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I, just like read every book I could find on
Hmm.
boundaries. I listened to every podcast, watched every, like YouTube video I could get my
Hmm.
hands on, went to a 12-step program. Like I just like immersed myself in figuring that out, on top of having to like do it every single day while
Yes.
I'm still married. And even now, so like I mean like boundaries are just a part of life. Like you just I don't think there's like maybe somebody has like amazing boundaries, but I think we're always constantly figuring out because it's like life is improv. You just never know what's going to come up.
So, yep.
It always presents like a new situation that you have to like figure out.
Kirby, I want to thank you again for sharing your story and your wisdom with us tonight. Your courage to speak the truth and your journey from codependency to self-empowerment is going to resonate with so many women who may still feel stuck or silenced. You are living proof that it's possible to come home to yourself, and I'm so grateful that you chose to join me tonight.
Oh my gosh, it's like it like, gets me like teary because I'm just like I am sitting here and I'm like, how is this going on right now? Like 5 years ago, I was like in a pit and I couldn't talk to people at parties, and so like it's yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and I love all the work that you're doing as
Yes.
well. And yeah, I just look forward to
Thank you.
yeah,
Connecting more for
yeah, for
sure.
sure. Yeah.
Yes. So to everyone listening, remember, you're not alone in this journey and you're exactly where you're meant to be. So until next time, take care of your heart, trust your intuition, and we will see you soon.